G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go through a Coach's Corner video, similar to the one Charlie did recently on the channel. We're going to go through one of my lifters, Anabelle D'Cruze, in her lead up to Nationals. Now, because of various events, Nationals isn't going ahead, but that hasn't changed anything for us, and we've still approached a max out for her just like we would Nationals, even though there isn't technically a competition coming up. So in this video, we're going to go through her experience leading up to Nationals, what we've done programming wise, what we've done technical execution wise, what we've been focusing on, and just general some mindset things that have been helpful along the way. So I'm going to break down each lift by lift, in terms of what we've done programming wise, look at some videos, and we'll kind of work it through like that. Before we get stuck into each video at a time, we're going to start by just some comments on mindset and overall approach. So some of this stuff is really relevant to literally this week, the last week in the lead up to her competition. So the week of competition, and I think what this really serves to illustrate is the benefit of having a coach, and a big part of having a coach is just someone there to reassure you when things seem like they're not going to plan, when you're a bit uncertain, having that kind of external voice just to kind of reassure you, keep you on task, and let you know that we're where we need to be. Just a couple of days ago, Anabelle was doing some of her final squatting before her competition. I'm going to keep saying competition even though there isn't a competition. And things felt, very important, felt a bit too hard. I asked her if she had any videos of the squat she hit. It was 115 single, which is our planned opener. I watched the video and it looked fine to me. Understandably, after a hard training block, a lot of hard sessions, there's going to be a lot of fatigue that's accumulated, and we might not be feeling amazing at this point. However, watching Anabelle's squat, it moved as fast as it needed to. I gave her some feedback that maybe she could have moved it with a bit more intent, but there was no reason why we needed to fret. And this is where having a coach comes in handy, because if she didn't have a coach and she was working by herself, this might have caused her unnecessary levels of stress. She might have think, do I need to change something? Do I need to hit another session? Am I in a good position leading up to comp? Whereas all it took was me telling her, Anabelle, let's look at bar speed. 115 is moving as fast as it needs to. Despite you not feeling good, we're still in a good place. And something I like to tell a lot of my lifters who are really trying to push the needle with their powerlifting performance is that our goal is to be strong, not to feel good. If on the day or in the lead up, the week coming, we feel a bit beaten up, we don't feel super fresh, this is almost to be expected and it's okay. We shouldn't chase feeling great if we are performing, because if performance is the goal and we're performing, we're doing what we need to be. So that's just kind of one thing to discuss in regards to mindset. Another thing we can talk about is just the overall approach and our thoughts leading up into the competition. So in the blocks leading up into this final training block, Anabelle's been doing some really good training. She's been hitting PRs in the 2 rep range across all lifts, as well as some higher rep PRs, and everything's been moving smoothly, feeling pretty confident across the lifts. As we were approaching the competition, I sat down and had a chat with her about where we want to go on the day itself. I think this is something that's important to do before a competition, just to know what the plan is, especially when we get to these high level competitions where it's not necessarily just about going against yourself. At local comps, you can pretty much just look at it as a situation that is you versus you. You don't really need to worry about what other people are doing. It's just about you beating your own personal bests for the most part. However, people don't do nationals, people don't do high level competitions just to beat themselves. They're there for a reason. They want to go against some of the best. That's why they're there. So I asked Anabelle, like, if we were in the position on the competition day to, pull for a podium position, try put something on that we're not entirely sure that we will be able to get, would you be okay with me doing that? And she was. She said, I've got some numbers that I want to hit, but once I've hit those numbers, I'm happy for you to kind of roll the dice a bit. And this is important to know leading up. So on the competition day, we aren't having this conversation there in the heat of the moment where we're maybe not going to be making the best decisions. It's good to go in with a bit of a plan. This is important for high-level lifters, but this is also important for people just starting out in powerlifting, having a bit of a set plan of what you're going to do on the day. Have your openers kind of set in stone, and have a rough idea about what weights you are going to go for your seconds and thirds and how you're going to go about the day. It just gives you a bit more confidence, and obviously this is where having a coach comes in handy, having someone there to make these decisions for you. So we had some numbers that we wanted to hit. Anabelle wanted to hit a 130 squat, a 70 bench, and a 150 deadlift. Coming into this block, those were the numbers that she wanted. Anything more would be a plus. So far, we've hit a 127.5 squat in training, so we're pretty close to our goal. We were able to hit the 70 bench, and we were also able to do a little bit over with the bench, 71. And then deadlift, we were able to hit 150, and we were also able to go as heavy as 155. So it's been a very successful lead up. We're plus 2.5 kilos over her previous comp PB on squats, plus 4 kilos on bench, and most significantly, plus 11 kilos on deadlift. So we're in a very confident position as we come into the competition. So now we're going to start to break it down a bit, lift by lift, and talk about some of the decisions that we've made and why we've made them. So here we have the program itself. We're going to start by squats, so we'll go through the 2 squatting days and kind of talk about what's going on here. So first week, we generally start with 1 less total set rather, and then go to adding another set in the second week. This is something we do as kind of a specific deload / intro week, just to make that first week a little bit easier before we launch into the later weeks in the block. So in the first week, Anabelle had 3 total sets. In the second week, she had 4 total sets. Top single at RPE 8, back off sets of 4. And you'll see here, these are done at 80% of projected daily max. This is a pretty typical setup for us with squats in the lead up to the competition. So then we'll scroll down to her second squat day. Here we have pause squats. Also 4 reps. First week we're doing 2 total sets. Second week we're doing 3 total sets. RPE 6 and 7 this week, and then from weeks 2 onwards, RPE 6, 7, 8. So Anabelle is a pretty technically proficient squatter. The main thing that we both have identified, both me and her, that has helped her squat is really focusing on midfoot balance. So this is where the pause squat has come in handy, and that's why we've kept it in the program in the lead up to the competition. The pause squat just gives you a bit more time spent in that bottom position where balance is most important and where it's most difficult to hold balance. So if we just have a pause where we're really nailing that balance in the bottom of the squat, this is a chance for us to practice that. So here we have Anabelle doing some rep work on squats, and you'll see strong emphasis on maintaining that balance, trying to keep our weight over the middle of our foot on the way down and on the way up. This is something everyone should be focusing on, and this doesn't change with our high level lifters. Those basic things continue to be an important emphasis. So the other things we can talk about squat, with the programming, it's been pretty straightforward. There's not too much to get stuck into there. Is a niggle that came up. So you can see over here in the notes section of our program, right from week 1, she was experiencing some bicep pain, or not necessarily pain, more like a light niggle in her bicep from week 1. So this was something that was obviously a bit of a roadblock that we had to start to address right from the get-go. We did this in a couple of ways. First, I gave Anabelle a couple of drills to work on just to try and ease what was going on in the bicep. But then we also decided between the two of us that it would just make more sense for her to bench on day 2 rather than day 1, because she found after doing all her sets of squats, she was struggling to get quality bench in. So instead, we simply just moved that bench session to day 2. This sounds pretty straightforward, but solutions often are pretty straightforward. We can try and get into the weeds of what's going on, what's causing this, but sometimes it's just as easy as managing our load a bit better. If squatting and benching on one day just doesn't seem to be feasible, we can squat on day 1, bench on day 2, and still get heaps of quality work in. So once again, this is where having a coach can come in handy, just to help you make those easy decisions of how to manage your training so you can still get the best out of all of your lifts. The other thing to talk about when it comes to Anabelle's squat would just be execution at the heavy weight. So I can pull up her doing some heavier singles. So I'm about to click play on the heaviest squat that Anabelle did of her prep, 127.5 kilos. This is a 2.5 kilo all-time PB. Now, what we do notice on this is her reverting to a habit that she's had in the past of kind of dive bombing her squat and dropping in a little bit too quick. This is quite a common technical error, and this is something that she's experienced at those heavy weights. Something that we've tried to focus on this, it's been a bit more of like a mindset thing, because this can often happen when people unrack a weight that they've never done before. It's a bit more than they've ever done before, and they can start to freak out and treat it differently than they treated the weight before or the weight a couple of weeks ago. And it's just important to realize as we push 5 kilos previous to more than the previous week, yes, this is going to be, there might be a PB, it might be something we've never done before, but if we're training sensibly, if we're picking smart loads, we're not redlining all the time, we don't need to change anything. It's just going to be the same squat that we've always done. So you'll watch through here, Anabelle dropped in probably a little bit too quick, lost a bit of tension through her midsection, and then as a result, this squat was harder than it had to be. So really, yes, we can think about technical execution, but more this was just what helped her to overcome this was just thinking about her mindset in the as she approached these heavier weights. Nothing needs to change. Go through the same routine, and the way we need to squat 127.5 is the same. We're going to squat 110, 100, 90. Nothing really needs to change here. So now we're going to move over to discussing the plan that we've had with Anabelle's bench. So we're benching 3 days a week. The first day is quite similar to the first day of squats. 3 total sets week 1, 4 total sets week 2. Top single, this time at RPE 9 and back off sets of 4. Day 2, we have a mid-grip pause bench, 3 sets of 8. Week 1, RPE 8 and then 2 drop sets. And then week 2 onwards, RPE 9 and then 2 drop sets. And then finally, we have a second single on her third bench day, a top single tempo bench at RPE 8 followed by back off 5s. Coming back to the first day, the reason we chose to go an RPE 9 on bench as opposed to squat is because with bench we can get away with hitting higher RPEs a bit more realistically than we can with squats and deadlifts. It's a lot less fatiguing to hit heavy singles with bench that are pretty close to failure than it is with squats and deadlifts. That's the first reason. The second reason is when we're working in lighter weight classes, when we're not benching that much total load as compared to people in higher weight classes, bench can be quite fickle, and we wanted to end this block benching what we were going to end up doing in comp, or at most, or at least rather, 1 or 2 kilos away from what we want to bench. So if we wanted to bench 70 or 71 in comp, I wanted Anabelle to load at minimum 70. In the end, we were able to load 71, and realistically, we're probably going to end up benching no more than 71, 72. 73 maybe, but for us to get 3 kilos more on the platform than we get in the gym is probably not super realistically. When we're working in these lower weight classes, benching less overall load, percentage-wise, it's just unrealistic for us to make these jumps. So that's why we included the 9. We wanted to have Anabelle finishing the block pretty much benching what she's going to end up doing on the comp day. So that's the first day bench approach. We had the second single on the third day. So on our middle day, we've gone with sets of 8. Reason being is, well, there's a few reasons. Firstly, the sets of 8 have allowed us to use less overall load on that second day just to manage load a bit. So we're not having 3 really heavy days because Anabelle's been hitting 2 singles that are both, within 5 kilos of the most she's ever benched. So that middle day is just, there is a chance to manage load. On top of that, both the sets of 8 as well as the mid-grip result in this day being a little bit more higher on the volume scale, because obviously the mid-grip gives us a bit more range of motion and then the higher sets of 8 give us a bit more volume as well. Bench as a whole, but particularly in lower weight classes, tends to respond well to more overall volume. Doing solely sets of 2s, 3s and 4s probably isn't going to be the best approach. Now, as I say that, it is important to take a reactive approach. If you try at doing high rep work and it seems to not be working for you, or if I gave that to a lifter and it seemed to not be working for them, I wouldn't be against moving and trying a different method. But generally speaking, having some higher rep work in there for bench and especially for people in lower weight classes is generally a good way to go about things. So that's why we've got the sets of 8. The mid-grip also is just generally a little bit less taxing on the body, which also helps us manage some of those niggles that can come up from doing a lot of comp-specific benching. We have RPE 8 followed by drop sets, and then RPE 9 followed by drop sets. Reason being is, sometimes with higher rep ranges, people can kind of get caught up in the flow of things because they're using a lot less weight than they're using on their singles, and they don't really bring the same intensity to it. So forcing there to be that RPE 8 and then RPE 9 from week 2 onwards makes people kind of like wake up a bit and actually treat this session with a bit of intensity and actually take it a bit more seriously. The final day we have the tempo single. Similarly as to why we can hit high RPEs singles with bench and it not really fatigue us a whole lot, we can get away with doing 2 singles with bench. A lot less fatiguing than the other lifts. For Anabelle, she's probably going to recover easily between 24 and 48 hours and be ready to hit another hard bench session. Just another chance for us to practice handling heavier loads. And then the tempo is going to explain literally the only one technical based thing that I give to Anabelle. She's a very technically proficient bencher, very consistent, does all the right things, uses leg drive, sets a nice arch position. The one thing she sometimes struggles with is consistently pulling her chest up to the bar. Once again, the things that more beginner lifters focus on are also never stop being important. We tell our beginner lifters to focus on pulling their chest up. I'm also telling a national level lifter to pull their chest up. It never stops being important. So the tempo gives us a bit more time on the eccentric to really focus on driving the chest up. So here we have Anabelle doing some tempo reps, really focusing on driving that chest up. The slower descent gives us more time to think about what we're doing. Generally, if we have a technical error that we're trying to address, adding a tempo is a good idea. It just gives us a bit more time to execute whatever that small tweak is that we're trying to focus on. In this instance, it's been driving the chest up. So here we have Anabelle about to bench 70 for the second time. She ended up hitting 71 as well. I just don't have a video of that one. But here is Anabelle hitting 70 for the second time in the block. This was also done without an unrack. We know for most people, and Anabelle as well, getting an unrack definitely helps performance a bit. So for her to be able to do this by herself, no unrack, gives us a lot of confidence that she'll be able to do it on the day with an unrack. So watching execute it, a bit harder than we would have liked, most likely due to the lack of the unrack, but with an unrack, as we saw, the next week she was able to hit 71 kilos as well. So now finally onto deadlift. We're going to discuss what we've done programming wise. With deadlifts, we probably have the most significant discussion about the way we approached the setup. So day one, top single, RPE 8, but instead of doing a lower rep range, we've gone a little bit higher. We've gone back off sets of 7 with Anabelle. We'll explain the day 2 and then it'll make a bit more sense as to why we've done this. So on her second deadlift day, we've done week 1, 5 sets of 2, week 2, 6 sets of 2. And these have been ramping sets, RPE 6, 7, 8, 9, so working up roughly 5% up each set. The reason we've done these sets on her second deadlift day is because in the blocks leading up, Anabelle was finding that in the higher rep ranges, she was better at executing her reps, but it was in the lower rep ranges where we were starting to see things fall apart. Having more sets and less reps gives us more first reps, more chance to practice the first rep, which is the most important one as we prepare for a powerlifting comp. Additionally, instead of just doing the first rep and then snapping straight to the second rep, I've asked her to do a reset in between each rep. So week 1, we did 10 total first reps essentially, and then week 2, we did 10 and then 12 week 2 onwards. So this is 12 chances for her to practice executing the first rep. And I think this was successful as we were able to see her push past, significantly past what she deadlifted before, whilst also maintaining her technique. So this explains a bit why, or this kind of leads into why we've gone with the higher rep range on her first deadlift day. To be completely honest, partially here I was just experimenting. As coaches, we like to think we have specific reasons behind everything, but sometimes we literally just have to do a little bit of trial and error. I've never done sets of 7 with someone in the lead up to a comp, but I had some reasons behind why I thought it would be useful, and I think the results have spoken for themselves. When Anabelle's doing those sets of 2 on the second day, they were there for a reason, but the problem that can arise with this approach is that it's just less total overall volume. Even though we're doing 6 sets, it's only 12 total reps. There's not a whole lot of volume to create a stimulus for our deadlift. This is why we've gone a bit higher with the reps on her first deadlift day, just so we can accumulate a larger amount of total volume on that first day. Additionally, this is an approach that is probably going to work better with people in lighter weight classes, moving less overall weight, moving the bar less distance. Anabelle is under 53, she doesn't move the bar that far when she does her sumo deadlifts, so her in particular needs to make sure she's getting a good amount of volume in versus someone who might be 6 foot plus in a higher weight class, doing conventional deadlifts as well. There's a lot more volume they're accumulating per rep. So we went with the higher rep range to make sure we were still getting a decent amount of volume across her entire week of training. Something interesting to note from her deadlifts is the back off percentages. So I gave her 72% as a back off percentage of her PDM to hit for her back off sets. We realized pretty quickly though, this was probably a bit too light, and based off what the target loads were, Anabelle was able to do roughly on average 10 kilos more than what was prescribed. This would mean, one, in future if I was to run with this method, I would set her percentages a bit higher. What this also means is, in the past, when I've given her sets of 4 or 5 and given her a PDM or a percentage back off of her PDM of around 80%, this may have been too low. She may be able to do 4 to 5 reps in the 82 or even 85% rep range. There's a big difference in people's ability to perform reps, and we need to make sure that we're working close enough to failure. If Anabelle had just followed the program as it was written, she would have stayed at about 112 or 115 and be doing weights that were essentially warm-up weights. So obviously she had the understanding to go up in weight to hit a hard enough RPE. But this is where we need to make sure we are training close to failure. Whether we're using percentages or RPE, if we're doing sets that are sub RPE6, for the most part, we're wasting our time. So first what we're going to show here is Anabelle's first time attempting a deadlift over 150 kilos. So she went 152.5 kilos. And you'll notice here, off the floor, we're not holding a very good starting position. A little bit too rounded, which then made lockout quite difficult. So we'll let it play off the floor, probably just rushing a bit too much, not taking her time to set a good starting position. And then obviously as we get to lockout, she did lock it out, but maybe a bit of downward movement. We're a bit unsure as to whether this would count in comp, and just not the way we want to be approaching it. Maybe the legs getting a bit rampy as well. We will now play 155. Took a bit more time at the bottom, was a bit more confident, a bit more patient, and despite it still being a hard lift, as she comes up here, we're going to notice she holds position a bit better, doesn't fall apart, and then as she comes to lockout, even though it was slow, it was never in doubt. Technique didn't break down, and we saw a nice smooth lockout. Obviously, as we work towards a weight she's literally never done before, it's probably not going to move quick, but the key part here is that we could trust our technique was going to get us through. Versus with 152.5, it was a bit in doubt as to whether we were going to get it up or not. So that'll pretty much wrap the video up. Hopefully you've got a bit out of that, seeing some of the whys behind the decisions we've made, seeing some of the things we've been focusing on technique-wise, and then just the general kind of approach to training as we lead up to a high priority competition. So also hopefully you can see that where having a coach comes in handy. Having someone here to make these decisions for you, whether that be what to focus on technique-wise, what to do programming-wise. You can probably see there's some intricacies in the way we've gone about the program. There's some things that have been specifically catered to Anabelle and her context, what has been needed for her to make progress, and we've had a lot of success here. So if you're new to powerlifting, unsure about where to go, would like to do a competition, definitely get in contact. We'd love to work with you to help you towards a powerlifting comp, or if you've done one comp and would like to take it to the next level, push towards people like Anabelle who are lifting at a higher level, definitely get in contact. Enjoy the video, please chuck us a like, leave a comment down below. We love getting comments with questions, furthering the discussion. Share this around if you find it useful, and other than that, happy lifting.